When the much anticipated sequel to one of the greatest action games of all time released in 2003, the world was shocked and disappointed. A classic case of mismanagement and lack of development time, Devil May Cry 2 leaves much to be desired. Regardless, in a series as beloved and as revolutionary as Devil May Cry, even the bottom of the barrel can have a lot to offer. For a few people, even though the game was markedly worse than the other titles in the franchise, Devil May Cry 2 has its own unique appeal. And no group of gamers is more likely to find that appeal than speedrunners. It seems when you're forced to search every nook and cranny of a game's skeleton for new ways to go fast, sometimes you can discover a brand new game just beneath the surface. That is all to say that despite how the game can fall flat in many ways when played casually, it turns out DMC2 is actually a banger of a speedrun. Today I'm going to show you exactly what that speedrun is like and why it's so cool. This is a segmented speedrun of Devil May Cry 2 any% normal in 44 minutes and 6 seconds. A segmented speedrun is a speedrun done in many small segments. Normal speedruns are done in a single segment from start to finish. Segmented runs are done mostly for the purpose of entertainment. In this instance, I wanted to get a clean run that showed all of the strategies that are done in the run in your average high-level Devil May Cry 2 speedrun, with clean footage, no webcams, no microphones, and no timer. This run was performed primarily by myself, but a few levels have guest appearances from the world record holder, lonerhero, and the individual level legend, Chris. As for the run itself, this is a run of the Dante disc. DMC2 has two separate campaigns, one for Dante and one for its second playable character, Lucia. Today we'll be focusing on beating the Dante campaign on the normal difficulty starting from a new game. Devil May Cry 2, unlike the other games in the series, doesn't have an easy difficulty, so despite normal already being the default for speedruns, there isn't much of a choice this time around. Especially since you can't actually start a new game on any of the harder difficulties, only New Game Plus playthroughs. Once the run finally starts, we get a few cutscenes that we skip. The TLDR for them is that our main character is Dante, a half-human, half-demon, whose father betrayed the demon world to save humanity and skip out on being a dad. Despite this, demons are still around, and we cold open to a red-haired woman doing her best to fight off everyone's favorite enemies, birds. Just normal birds. I'm not even sure they're demons. I think this is just South America and those are Andean condors. Before she is overwhelmed, our protagonist comes flying through the ceiling, saving the day, blasting his blicky, and single-handedly eliminating an entire species. It's revealed that this red-haired mystery woman called Dante and told him to come here, as he is a devil hunter and seeks to destroy any demons that are brought to his attention. She leaves after receiving a coin from Dante and dramatically points to a spot on the map that conveniently just so happens to be above a piece of jewelry that she's just stolen. This spot on the map leads to a house that in the next scene Dante takes note of and then heads towards doing an epic superhero landing. Insert the devil potentially crying. This puts us in the start of the run proper on mission 1. The goal is simply to arrive at the house that Dante takes note of in the cutscene. The first level starts off slow, giving you ample space to explore and learn how the game functions, with multiple small platforming sections before you arrive at any enemies. The first thing to take note of is that the control scheme is unique to DMC2. I won't bother re-explaining how the controls work in DMC1. If you want more info on that, go watch my DMC1 video, but in DMC2, the A button is jump, the X button is shoot, the Y button is sword, and the B button is roll. The left stick controls movement, while the right stick remains mostly unused. In addition, the right bumper locks on, locking the player's aim to a specific enemy or direction. This can be used to create multiple unique analog directional context-sensitive commands, such as the stinger move when holding towards the direction of lock-on, or high time when holding away. The main new addition here is the dedicated dodge roll button. This can be done in any direction and has invincibility frames near the start of the animation. Rolling is essential in this run for many reasons, but the most important one right at the start is it's our fastest form of movement early on. One could say that DMC2 predicted the DMC anime. Because our main goal is to blow up and act like we don't know nobody, we simply do some rolling movements to run right past the first few obstacles. We start with a double jump unlocked from the get-go, so that makes platforming rather simple. It's important to note that the roll button also doubles as a wall run button when nearby walls. While this wall run is sick as fuck, it's often very slow, so to avoid it, you can simply let the analog stick go neutral. Dante will only wall run if you're holding the analog stick in a direction while performing a roll next to a wall. This means it's best to set a direction for rolling, and then spam roll until you need to make a turn. Then change angle and continue to let it go neutral while you roll in that new direction. Once arriving at this bridge, we're greeted with our first enemies of the game, Agate of Enos. They get paid no mind, however, as they aren't a required combat encounter. In fact, there are only 2 required combat encounters in this entire first mission. Still, we shoot them one time on the way past, and it's not just to be toxic. The name of the game for DMC2 speedruns is Unknown Mechanics. While the game itself didn't exactly get to cook long enough, it still has the bones of a Devil May Cry game. So there are a ton of nuanced mechanics under the hood that are just never explained. Because of this, and also because of the way the speedrun ends up being laid out, I'm gonna have to front load a few of these explanations, or you simply won't be able to understand what's going on. So just bear with me for a moment, as it's gonna get nerdy as hell. The game has a style ranking system where the variance of moves and frequency of your attacks build up a meter that goes from D to S. The higher your style meter, the more red orbs or currency enemies will drop on their death. DMC2 is notorious for having a super difficult style system, with most players not knowing how to maintain a combo or build style with it. This is mostly due to the lack of understanding of how the system works, as it will be displayed shortly. It seems Dante didn't actually make them extinct as the Andean Condor comes back for another appearance. We blast it one time with the blicky and then keep on rolling. The next fight will be a required combat encounter, but our first goal is going to be a bit more complicated than just clear the enemies as fast as possible. You see, the gunshots that we've been doing up to this point have been setting up a super obscure piece of tech called an Orb Manipulation. Enemies drop more orbs the higher your rank is when you kill them, but in DMC2, if you get certain ranks in a specific order, you can add an additional multiplier to this calculation. By achieving an E rank, which is basically just starting any combat encounter but not building enough style to reach a D rank, and then a second E rank, and then 2 D ranks in a row, and then 2 A ranks in a row, you then allow your next 10 kills to have a 10 times orbs drop multiplier. So we achieved an E rank with our first 2 combat encounters, throwing 1 pistol shot their way. Now in this next combat encounter, we'll be setting up the 2 D ranks, then 2 A ranks, hoping that we leave the first with our next 10 kills storing the 10 times multiplier. Before the fight starts, we do collect a gold orb. This item allows the player to revive instantly from death instead of reverting from the start of a room. You can only store 1 of these at a time, and the game is generous enough to give you 1 for free here. With the Enos spawning in, we start our combat encounter, and from here the combat is very important. We need to build exactly the right amount of style in every part of the fight, or we won't maintain our orb manipulation. The first 2 get dealt with a normal combo, but ending with Stinger. This always builds us to a D rank and kills. Between ranks, we need to let the style meter disappear. This should be no problem, as in DMC2, the style meter runs out super quickly. In order for a rank to be stored for the orb manipulation, we need it to disappear fully, then start the next rank build from scratch. The second enemy gets a smaller iteration of the combo that also arrives at a D rank. The third enemy spawns from the upper platform and doesn't always fall down, but once he does, we're going to do the same combo on him to build towards that A rank. The difference here is that when he dies, we instantly lock onto a freshly spawned Enos and start blasting. Guns don't build style, but they do stop it from falling. This is great for helping close the distance without losing the combo. Rolling also stalls the style decay indefinitely, so we roll towards the enemy to close the gap. We deal damage with the normal combo and end this enemy with a high time. DMC2's style system heavily favors special moves like Stinger and High Time and Helmbreaker. So most style is built by these moves, and regular combos are often used to add filler in between the big moneymakers. We shoot the upstairs enemy to aggro him to come down to us as we continue the combo on the pinwheel Innis down here, who, if not taken care of ASAP, is way more likely to hit us, ruining our combo. Taking damage also instantly ruins your style meter. Unfortunately for us, the enemy does not come down, so we must go up to it. Jumping does not maintain style, so doing so on elevation changes without losing your style meter is exceedingly difficult. We have our first A rank and only need 1 more. We kill the next enemy while using Devil Trigger. The extra damage output for being a Devil Trigger allows us to quickly dispatch him without building up too much style. Then we maintain this little style that's built by chaining rolls while we stall for the next enemy wave to spawn. This is a deceptively hard part of the fight, because while rolling does maintain style, wall running does not. And with no way to cancel a wall run, the combo will certainly meet its demise if you run into the wall on accident. We clear the last 3 enemies in a way that gets us an A rank and ends the fight. With our previous 2 encounters netting us E ranks each and the 2 D ranks at the start of this fight, followed by the 2 A ranks we just built up, we now have the orb manipulation set up, with the next 10 kills dropping 10 times the normal amount of orbs. Jumping into the next combat arena, we seek to take advantage of this. This new enemy, the Misra, has very low health, however, so it can be kind of hard to build style on them. Thanks to the stacking nature of the orb manipulation and the style meter, we can get a crazy 1,000 orbs per enemy kill if they die with an S rank currently active. By alternating our style building moves like Stinger and High Time and maintaining the style built between with pistol shots and rolls, we can quickly build an S rank and completely farm orbs. Once the S rank is built though, we can simply maintain it with some double triggered pistol shots to kill the rest of the enemies in the room quickly. When enemies are close, it's faster to hit them with the sword, but often the Misra spawn on the walls or far away, and that's when we blast them. All that's left for the mission now is to open the gate and head into the village that Dante was looking into in the intro cutscene. A few rolls later and we arrive at the end of the first mission. Devil May Cry 2 is a mission-based game, and with 18 missions that all have their own challenges and adventures, the only thing that stays the same is that there is a mission rank granted to you at the end of every mission that gauges how well you did. This is based off of 5 main factors: time spent, orbs collected, stylish average, damage taken, and items used. These 5 things are added together, and then your total score determines what your rank is for that mission. S ranks give you 4 points, A ranks give you 3 points, B ranks give you 2 points, C ranks give you 1 point, and D ranks give you 0 points. If you want to get an S rank, then you need between 18 and 20 points, and with only 20 total points to collect, this means you need to play pretty much perfectly in every dimension in order to be able to do so. If you want to get an A rank, you need between 13 and 17 points. If you want to get a B rank, you need between 8 and 12 points. If you want to get a C rank, you need between 3 and 7 points, and anything less than 3 points is a D rank. At the end of every mission, you get a bonus amount of orbs depending on which rank that you got. An S rank giving you 5,000, an A rank giving you 3,000, a B rank giving you 2,000, and a C rank giving you 1,000. All 5 of these criteria have their own unique methods for measuring how well you did. For example, time spent is based on the par time of the level. Every level in Devil May Cry 2 has a unique par time, and if you're able to beat that level in under the par time, you'll receive an S rank for time. This S rank then gives you 4 points towards your overall mission score. If you don't beat the par time, but you're less than 1 minute slower than it, then you'll get an A rank. If you're over the par time but less than 3 minutes slower than it, then you'll get a B rank. If you're over the par time but less than 6 minutes over it, then you'll get a C rank. And if you're over the par time by over 6 minutes, then you'll get a D rank. Obviously, this is a speed run, so you can just go ahead and assume that we're going to get an S rank for time on every single mission. Next up is orbs collected, and it works really similar to how time spent works, where every mission has its own unique orbs collected par, and you have to collect more than the amount of par orbs to be able to get the S rank. This one in particular is the most overtuned out of any of these other criteria. The hardest part about getting S ranks in DMC2 is usually the orbs collected. Well, besides damage taken, but we'll get to that later. Just to give an example of how overtuned orbs collected can be, Mission 1's orb collected par is 4,000 orbs, which with this orb manipulation that we did, we only were able to barely scrape by 6,000 orbs. That means that in a lot of missions, you need a really firm understanding of both the style system and also orb manipulation strategies. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to get enough orbs to get that S rank. Your other option would be to grab all of the secret red orb caches spread out through across the levels. But even if you grab those, you're still going to need a really good grasp over the style system to get enough orbs from the enemies to make up the difference. Regardless of how difficult it is, you still have to do it. In order to get an S rank, you need to match the par orbs or get more than that. To get an A rank, you need more than 75% of the par orbs. To get a B rank, you need more than 50%. To get a C rank, you need more than 20%. And if you have less than 20%, then that means that you're going to get a D rank. Next up is a new addition to the mission ranking system, Stylish Average. DMC2 is the first game in the franchise to use the style meter to determine what rank you get for the end of the mission. The goal here basically is to have the highest average style meter throughout the mission so that you can get a higher score and thus a better rank. This criteria is arguably one of the more brutal in DMC2 because the style meter itself is really hard to maintain and requires a bit of esoteric knowledge that not many people know. On top of that, it's literally stylish average, meaning it takes the sum of all of your style meters and then divides them by the total number of combat encounters that you had in that mission. This means that every time you do a combat encounter, even if you try to just run past the enemies, that is going to be marked as your average stylish meter. That means every time you go into a combat encounter, you have to try to get as high of a stylish rank that you possibly can. And just running past stuff will give you a 0 on your style meter, and zeros greatly bring down the average. In order to get an S rank for stylish average, you need to have a score of 3.5 or higher at the end of the mission. Having a combat encounter not actually bring up the style meter is an E rank, and that gives you 0 points, but it's still marked against you on your number of ranks that you got. Then if you get a D rank on that combat encounter, you get 1 point. If you get a C rank, you get 2 points. If you get a B rank, you get 3 points. If you get an A rank, you get 4 points. And if you get an S rank, you get 5 points. Every time you reach a number of style meter points above an S rank while maintaining it, you can get additional points, however. Meaning if you chain one really long S rank, you can get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, upward of as far as you could chain the combo in points. This helps to balance out the average from all of the combat encounters where you either don't get any or you only get a D. It's a little bit complicated, so why don't I illustrate it with an actual example. In mission 1 here, we got an S rank for stylish average, and I'm going to break down how we did so. Our first 2 combat encounters were both E ranks. So that's 0 plus 0. Then when we actually started setting up the Orb Manipulation, we got 2 D ranks and then 2 A ranks. D ranks only give you 1 score, so that's 1 plus 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 0 plus 0. This brings our average to 1.67. This can't be fixed by just getting a simple S rank in the last encounter. The S rank would only give 5 score, bringing the average up to 2.14, a far cry from the 3.5 that we need. So then what we have to do is build an S rank and then try to keep it for as long as humanly possible, trying to build even more style points on top of it to get additional score towards our stylish average. Because this meter fight is really long, we can maintain it over a very long period of time and actually build it up so that we can get at least 15 points from just this encounter. This will bring our stylish average up past 3.5, giving us an S rank. So to recap, our 2 E ranks were 0 points, then we got 2 D ranks, which were 1 point each, then 2 A ranks, which were 4 points each, and then we got 15 points on this final combat encounter, bringing us to an average of over 3.5. Next up is damage, which is easy to understand but hard to execute. No damage, of course, is an S rank, but anything less than 1,000 points of damage is an A rank. Anything less than 2,000 points is a B rank, anything less than 3,000 points is a C rank, and anything more than 3,000 points is a D rank. For reference, 5,000 HP is the amount of HP you start with at the beginning of the game. This is almost the same scaling as it was in DMC1 for damage taken. However, in DMC1, your total HP on your normal health bar was 2,000. Meanwhile, in DMC2, it's 5,000. This means that proportionately, you can take way more damage and get way less punished on the damage system in DMC1 as opposed to DMC2. DMC2 is way more punishing, meaning that any hit is actually way worse for your rank than it would be in DMC1. Lastly is items used, and as long as you don't use any items at all, then of course you'll get an S rank, but every single item in the game has a certain score attached to it, and if you use those items, it adds that score to your item list. If you have more than 1 point, but less than 4 points, then you'll get an A rank. If you have more than 5 points, but less than 9 points, then you get a B rank. If you have more than 9 points, but less than 15 points, then you get a C rank. If you have more than 15 points, then you get a D rank. As for an example, for items and the score that they give you, Devil and Holy Stars only give you 1 point. So you can use 4 of them and still get an A rank. Both Smell of Fear and Gold Orbs give you 5 score, so using even one of those will net you at the most a B rank. That is a lot of information, but it's something that takes a bit more of a backseat in DMC2 speedrunning compared to some of the other games in the franchise. The game where it matters most is far and away DMC1, but DMC2 it does matter quite a bit as well. The main reason it's not as important is there simply isn't as much to do with your money. We get our first glimpse of the shop at the start of Mission 2, and it's pretty bleak. There's no ability upgrades in DMC2, you can't buy additional moves. Instead, Dante spawns with his full kit from Mission 1. Instead of moves, you can buy flat damage upgrades to your swords and guns. This seems like it would be quite useful, and it has its moments, but actually what most of your money and time is spent on is items. But we'll be diving into that more later. With Mission 1 completed, Dante arrives at the house that he was looking for, which then, just like my pants on a first date, spontaneously fucking explodes. Thankfully, the person we're looking for, a woman who remembers when Final Fantasy was turn-based, Martier, is still alive and she was waiting for us. She supposedly knew Sparta, and her clan fought with him against the demons. She summoned us here because CEO, billionaire playboy Heihachi is using demon powers from Tekken to dominate the area. It turns out that peaceful protest didn't work, so it's time to bring out Dante X. For whatever reason though, Dante is edgy as hell in this game and leaves whether he's gonna help up to a coin flip. Dude must have been watching way too much Batman or something. As his reward for helping them, Martier promises to tell Dante a story about his dad. Not sure how this is supposed to motivate him though, because he already left it up to chance. What if he had flipped the coin and it landed wrong side up? Would Dante just have to not help even though he wanted to hear the story? Pretty short-sighted of Dante if you ask me. Now he just looks like an ass. With Mission 2 starting, we buy our first upgrade to our Sword Rebellion. This makes it do overall 20% more damage per swing. The cave that leads us towards Arius is a bit of a maze. There are these faces on the wall that need to be broken so that you can make way for Dante to progress. Once inside the first proper room, we arrive at a bit of a puzzle. Standing in the center, 4 orbs will appear out of the ground. Their location and the pattern that spawns in with them is random. After breaking 8 balls, we can progress. Not every pattern allows for enough time to break all 4 balls in one cycle, so there's a rather large time loss here if you get bad luck. This first pattern is common and is a perfect time to discuss Dante's basic combo moveset, as it's vastly different in DMC2. In DMC1, combos would change depending on the timing of the sword input presses, creating the pause combo system. Increasing the amount of time between attacks in various parts of the default combo will result in new combos. In DMC2, it's a bit different. Instead, whether you leave the left analog stick in neutral at certain times during the default combo determines what combo you'll do. For example, this is a purely natural combo with no left stick movement. And here is the same combo, but I hold the left stick in any direction at the start of the combo. You see how the first attack is different? Now let's move the left stick during the second attack of the combo instead of the first. This also results in a different combo. This is the basics of DMC2's combo system. This can still be interrupted at any point with a roll, gunshot, or command move like Stinger or High Time, just like in DMC1. It just uses slightly different methods for initiating alternate combos on the main string. This is important info here because if you don't let the left stick go neutral for the first hit on these orbs through the corner, it doesn't actually reach far enough to connect, resulting in a missed cycle. In the next room, after breaking another wall by doing a combo that does the most hits and ending it with High Time, because High Time has a faster recovery, we unlocked yet another new pathway. This time, it's going to be a bit harder to break the wall because there's enemies in the room. Even if you don't use the lock-on function, Dante will still auto-lock onto the enemies. Thankfully though, in DMC2, you can completely override the lock-on feature for any and all attacks. All you have to do is hold the right trigger down. When doing so, Dante can perform any attack in any direction regardless of if there are enemies in the room or not. With this ability, we were able to break open the wall and activate this orb without having to kill all of the pyromancers teleporting around the room. There's only one required combat encounter in this mission and we're making our way there now. This is when we get to show off the game's Devil Trigger. We used it a little bit before on Mission 1, but this is where it really gets to shine. In this corner of the room, there is a pad that refills the Devil Trigger. We stand on top of it briefly to get enough Devil Trigger so that we can collateral these Enis with our Stinger. Devil Trigger makes all attacks do 20% more damage, as well as have additional elemental effects. As for the guns, it turns your pistols into full auto mayhem. These guns aren't as good as hitting directly, but when you don't have the ability to close the gap fast, they're not far behind in damage. After the first wave is done, we get back on the platform to refill Devil Trigger while the next wave spawns. This wave is Pyromancers who teleport. If they spawn close enough, we can kill them in one stinger. After they die, 2 Goatlings spawn in from above. The first allows us to juggle him with a nice sword combo. The other then gets blasted away because he won't come down and fight us, after what he just saw us do to his friend. Defeating them unlocks this item, the Aerial Heart. DMC2 has customizable Devil Trigger. At the top left of our screen by our health bar, we can see 3 slots to mix and match Devil Trigger amulets. We start with the Electro Heart, which changes our attacks to have electric elements. We just picked up the Aerial Heart, which, as you may have guessed, allows us to fly. You then use this to fly out of the room and end the level. By double jumping and Devil Trigger, you automatically start to fly, and by repeatedly pressing the jump button, you can increase your height. With this mission over, we receive a B rank and head into mission 3. I know, I just won't shut up about all the little details in this game, but there's a reason that people don't know much about how this game's mechanics really work. And that's primarily because the game doesn't ever require you to use them to beat it. On top of that, many of the game's most useful and interesting mechanics are completely unexplained and even hidden. Mission 3 is going to show off what is definitely the most unexpected part of DMC2. Rolling towards the end of this hallway, we have a Goatling that spams fire pillars at us, but we pay it no mind. We have one thing in sight, and we won't stop until we see it. And that's red. Arriving at the locked door, we then stand in front of it. This causes a hand to come out and grab us, doing damage. At the same time as this, we beat on the Goatling while taking as many hits from him as possible. Once he's dead, the door opens and we make our way into the first boss fight of the game, Rangarera. And despite his ape-like appearance, Dante is the one that's gonna go apeshit. By once again standing near the exit where the door is, the hand will come out and hit us. This finally gives us what we wanted to see. Red. Red health is often a sign in games that you're about to die. Low HP, run away, play defensive. Not in DMC2. Red means dead. Call an ambulance, but not for me. If your HP falls below 10% of its max value, you'll see this red HP. And when that happens, you can activate Devil Trigger and something crazy will happen. You then activate Majin Devil Trigger. This form is a completely unique Devil Trigger mode that is only available in DMC2, and only if you meet the low HP requirement. It's a high risk strategy that pays off with a huge reward. Not only do you get a completely unique moveset that comes with 2 additional wave clearing power moves, you're also completely invincible to any and all damage while in this form. And its damage is crazy high while simultaneously stacking with any sword upgrades you may have. By hitting gun and sword at the same time while holding a lock on, you can shoot a massive laser beam out of your chest that one-shots a Rangarera. That is the power of Majin Devil Trigger. As you might expect, this completely destroys your rank for the level, but because of how much damage it does, the majority of the speedrun revolves around setting it up for bosses, and DMC2 has a lot of bosses. Mission 3 ends as soon as it starts, completing the thing with a blistering 49-second time. Mission 4 is about to be similar, with a very familiar level structure. Rolling past the first Mistras, we arrive at a door that needs to be hit open. It's managed by holding the override lock-on button and doing the fastest combo for maximum hits. Normally after this, you would proceed through these double doors and do a fight that when completed unlocks the Quick Heart, your third piece to the Devil Trigger customization. This gives an additional 20% speed increase for all actions when Devil Trigger is activated. This is intended to be used to DT run fast enough to make it under this gate before it closes. Fortunately for us, we can handily make it under this gate just by rolling and having good movement. This completely skips that combat encounter and the Quick Heart. Once inside, we fight Joe Cat, just like Twitter always has. This fight has a perfect setup for Majin built right in. The boss emanates this toxic gas that does damage over time, also like Twitter. By hugging the left wall and getting hit by the tentacles and gas at the same time, we can quickly build up a Majin setup, and then activate. This boss normally wouldn't let you hit its main body unless you've broken some of its tentacles first, creating a sort of shield that pushes the player back after a few hits. But Majin does so much damage and stun that the boss literally doesn't get to fight back. After Dante deletes his browser history, we head towards the motorcycle where we can collect the shotgun and complete the mission. Not only does Majin do insane DPS, but it's also the fastest form of movement. By doing a few stingers on the boss before activating Majin, we can make it so that we have enough double trigger left to Majin run into the level end trigger, avoiding this long animation of Majin ending. Starting mission 5, we are in it for the long haul. This is the mission, the infamous one, and for good reason. It's one of the longest missions in the game, and it has multiple boss fights that can be extremely punishing if done incorrectly. At this point, despite our lack of good ranks, we have accumulated quite a bit of money, and with no holy waters to buy in DMC2, we focus primarily on Devil Trigger, buying purple orbs to increase the amount of time we can spend in it, and Devil Stars to make it last longer. Buying a purple orb at the start of this mission refills your Devil Trigger to full, which is especially nice because in DMC2, not only do you start every mission with 0 Devil Trigger, but there's also no taunt button to build up Devil Trigger quickly. This first fight is with the two good boys, Gary and Freaky. Gary is pretty cool, but Freaky is, well, freaky. By standing in this corner in Devil Trigger shooting, we can bait the dogs into attacking towards us, so we can actually hit them with our sword. They often will just stand there doing nothing. This is perfect because the DPS is way higher on the sword than the guns, so we try to get in as many stingers as we can. If we're lucky, they'll line up and we can skewer them both with one stinger. This fight is made infinitely easier in DMC2 because of the addition of a more sophisticated lock-on system. In Devil May Cry 1, you had an automatic lock-on system that had a manual lock-on button, but you couldn't choose which target you were locked onto, nor was there any reticle that showed you who you're currently locked onto. In DMC2, you have a reticle that shows you what you're locked onto currently, and it will only switch targets if you manually press in the stick to change targets, allowing multi-enemy juggling, like in this fight, to be possible. Ending the fight, we head into the next, where DT management is going to be super important. Now that we have the shotgun, we can switch back and forth between the shotgun and Ebony and Ivory with left trigger. The shotgun is super useful for crowd control, knocking the goatlings over so we can hit 2 of them at the same time. Devil Trigger is gained by damage dealt, but only on moves when Devil Trigger is not active. This can be abused, however, as the DT built is calculated on hit of the attack, not when the attack starts. So you can start an attack in Devil Trigger and then deactivate Devil Trigger before it hits, causing the damage dealt to be higher than it otherwise would be, but still getting the additional Devil Trigger built from the attack doing extra damage. By doing this, you can make the Devil Trigger last much longer than it would otherwise. Once the first 2 goatlings are dead, we take care of the Puyas in the air with some DT guns, and then juggle the next 2 goatlings before heading on to the next section. We arrive at what appears to be Tiananmen Square, with 3 tanks lined up across the level. Infested Tank is a tanky boy, but he can be taken out rather quickly if you hit its weak spot. Just like any Resident Evil game, the eye is the key. On each tank is a unique eyeball that spawns in a different spot. If you hit it, you do a ton more damage. The tank's attacks aren't perfectly random, but this first one does have a random opener. We get a good attack on this first tank though, which lets us do a ton of damage and just build up our DT while doing so. We finish the first fight with some DT helm breakers on the eye for massive damage. The next tank will get a similar treatment, but we get unlucky and it does a worse attack first. The machine gun up top starts blasting away while we beat on its eye. This stuns and knocks us out of our combo, so we need to activate Devil Trigger to counter this, using a lot of our Devil Trigger meter. This is fine though because we built plenty from the first tank. With the second tank dead, there's only one left, and this one plays out the same way every single time. It's aiming at us from around the corner, so its eye, which is much harder to spot than the other 2 tanks, is now in front of a platform. We can stand on top and blast away at the eye. This baits out the machine gun attack, which we actually want this time. Once it started firing at us, we just trade damage. That is until our health gets too low, and then we activate Devil Trigger to increase our damage reduction to balance it out a little bit. Being very careful not to die, we get that red sweet spot that we're looking for, setting up Majin and Devil Trigger for the next room. Once the tank dies, then the real fight begins. The infected chopper spawns in and chases us up a burning skyscraper. Rolling away, we then double jump using guns to max out our height into Majin and fly upwards out of the building. Majin flying is significantly faster than regular DT flying, and if done correctly, leaves you with just enough DT left so that when you exit the building, you're met with the chopper once again. You can do some fireballs to instantly kill the chopper. This part of the fight is optional, but it's much faster to kill the chopper here than to run around, as it instantly teleports you to the next section of the map. Now we're in a bit of trouble. Majin Devil Trigger, while extremely busted, is also really intelligently designed. Devil Trigger regains HP over time, and even with the least possible Devil Trigger and the least amount of health when activating, you will always heal out of the red health range, making it impossible to chain 2 Majin activations in a row without at least taking another hit. With no Devil Trigger left and back in green health, we still have the chopper chasing us and a whole boss fight with it at the end of the level. Thankfully, the only enemies in the rest of the level are the chopper and these Puyas, whose attacks all do less than even the minimum HP you can have after activating Majin. So getting hit by any of their attacks will put us right back into Majin. The problem is actually getting hit. The chopper right after the teleport has many things it can do. The best RNG would be an attack, but it instantly flies away here. We then climb up to the next building using our guns and wall jumping to max out height, stopping right before we get to the top. If we go any higher up, the Puyas will actually despawn, and we don't want that because we're going to try to farm a hit here. There are 2 more Puyas that spawn in after in a later section just before the boss fight, but that's while we're climbing up a skyscraper that is really easy to fall off of. Even if we were able to get them to hit us as fast as these guys would, there's a high chance that we're just going to go yeet off the building and have to climb all the way back up again, which is really slow. Once we get hit by the Puya and get the health setup that we need, we progress, making sure to avoid this green orb so we don't accidentally refill our health. Then climb up the left side of this building. The left side is the side that the infested chopper is going to spawn in on once we get to the top. After being careful to dodge the Puyas on our way up to the building, at the top we use a Devil Star that we've had since the start of the game. We now have access to Majin Devil Trigger, but it's on a really tight timer. It runs out quickly and the chopper has a lot of health. It always starts the fight in the same spot and hovers for a bit before deciding what to do. It has a lot of different random attacks it can open with. Most of these attacks do not leave the chopper open to hits, so our goal is to simply barrel stuff the thing and not let it play the game, killing it before it even has a chance to fly away. This is made especially difficult by the boss's weak point being on its side, specifically its left side. Similar to the tank, it has an eyeball, and any attacks that don't hit the eyeball do 5 times less damage, making even Majin damage look like nothing. By jumping into Majin and flying into the boss arena from this side, we can guarantee that we have a few shots at the eyeball before the chopper can fly away. That's all we need though, because once it's stunned, it won't move anymore. By holding the jump button through the cutscene, we can fly up exactly 1 time and then stay there. Holding the jump button when flying maintains the height. This just so happens to be the perfect height to hit the eyeball with fireballs. This then stun locks the helicopter, bringing it down before we even run out of Majin, and before he gets to move out of the way as well. This is easily one of the biggest choke points in the entire speedrun. If you miss any of your shots and don't get the quick kill, then fighting the chopper fight without getting the Majin set up is going to be super slow. In fact, the best strategy is to die, use the gold orb, get your Devil Trigger back up to full, and then reset up Majin with some rockets that the chopper will shoot at you periodically. Mission 6 is entirely a boss fight, and one of the coolest in the franchise, if you ask me. You fight an entire possessed skyscraper. On top of it, the fight is entirely scripted. He does the same attacks in the same order every time. This sets us up a juicy Majin fight. By switching between Ebony and Ivory and the shotgun, we can cancel the recovery of the shotgun to shoot it faster. We do this while farming a few hits on the laser to build more Devil Trigger and remove health from Majin. Then, once we're close, we jump up and activate Devil Trigger to do round trip, an aerial sword move that does insane damage. We do this while getting hit by the laser, and because DT reduces the amount of damage taken, it just barely doesn't kill us, and instead puts us in the right Majin range. We don't want to activate it just yet though, as this fight has 2 phases with 2 completely separate health bars. In the meantime, we continue to shotgun cancel and doing high time when the head lowers towards us to get in some extra damage. When the boss's HP is low enough, we activate Majin and use 1 fireball to finish this phase. This triggers the next, where the boss's head comes down off the wall and chases us through the city streets like a Scooby-Doo villain. This phase's weak spot is its spinal cord, just like any vertebrate. So by using the Majin speed to run around and to do full combo, we can take out the majority of its health. With one extra hit, we can then use a super move right before the DT runs out. Both this move, Doomsday, and the laser do more damage the more Devil Trigger you have left over when you use it, but only if you have more than 80% of it left. So if you aren't going to use it right away, it's best to wait until the last possible moment and then use it. Doomsday is a huge area of effect attack that hits everything in the area for massive damage. With this, we do just enough damage to completely stop the boss from getting to play the game. Mission 7 is a more traditional level, that is to say, it's not literally only a boss fight. After some light platforming past some phantom cosplaying Mithra, we ride a pipe like Shadow the Hedgehog to our new destination. You can only hold one gold orb at a time, but there are multiple scattered around the levels. There was one on Mission 5 that we skipped, but we're going to grab this one here just for a bit of safety. Although we already have one, picking up another gives an additional 1,000 orbs, which helps for both the rank and also the overall orb route. You may have noticed at this point that there is very little margin for error in the speedrun. With the Majin Devil Trigger setups, if you make a mistake, then you simply die. If you have a gold orb, then you won't have to start the fight over from scratch, but you will lose the Majin setup. There are backups for those events, but they are substantially slower than the original Majin setup. In any high-level run of Devil May Cry 2, a death in most places loses so much time that the run isn't considered good anymore and is just reset. This makes DMC2 a brutally difficult speedrun, and often the Majin setups aren't 100% consistent. You'll have to improvise based on what attacks enemies give you and how much health you end up having. Back to this mission, we start this elevator by stepping on it and it goes down without us. While it's doing so, we can actually leave the room to collect some bonus items. The elevator takes a set amount of time to reach the bottom, and it actually still continues to count towards the timer even if you're not in the same room. So we lose no time heading back into the lava pit to pick up Vendetta. There are 3 additional swords that you can get as Dante, and Vendetta is the best one by far. It's very marginally slower with its swing speed, but has greatly increased damage. All 3 swords have the same moveset though, so don't expect anything new in that department. We also backtrack to a DT restoring pad that we use to then get enough Devil Trigger to fly up to the top here and grab the Flame Heart. The Flame Heart replaces the Electro Heart slot, and well, it makes your attacks do fire damage. This is good and all, but what we really want it for is how insanely busted its stun values are. We'll get to that more later. Heading back to the elevator, we make sure to get an E rank on the butterflies. We earlier also got an E rank on the Mithra. This is to set up the next Orb Manipulation. Jumping down the shaft, we enter a tram that proceeds to an undisclosed location. This section is a pure auto-scroller as well. No matter how fast you kill the enemies, the tram always arrives at the same time. This makes it a perfect opportunity to do an Orb Manipulation because it doesn't matter how slow we do the combat. With our 2 E ranks already recorded, we just need 2 more D ranks and 2 more A ranks. Once those are gotten, we then farm for an S rank and watch the money pile up. Even with the Orb Manip, we kill all of the enemies far before the door opens, leaving a bit of downtime to enjoy the beeping on repeat. Once free from our own personal hell, we arrive at another elevator, this time going up. No waiting this one out while we do errands though. We can't just double trigger fly to the top because there's an invisible wall, so we do our best to occupy ourselves by blasting away at some lava butterflies. With that mission done, we head into mission 8, which is once again just a boss fight. Dante finally catches up to Arius, who for some reason is riding an Ouroboros helicopter. Dude must also have a sketchy browser history. Dante just lets him fly away though, because just like any good CEO, he summons his lost leader, the esports team Furia, to defend him as he runs away. We take a short pit stop off at the shop first though to buy another purple orb and to upgrade Vendetta. It's not equipped though, so as soon as we're able to, we do so. Rolling towards the boss, then we do a move that we haven't seen yet, Million Stab. By doing the first 2 attacks, then holding the left stick on the third, we can charge up a volley of attacks while in Devil Trigger. By mashing, we make this attack hit more times. We can release Devil Trigger here and have this attack actually regain some Devil Trigger because of the amount of hits done. After 2 of these, we roll and then activate DT to activate flight mode really close to the ground. Holding A then keeps us floating. This allows us to do round trips, the sword melee attack in the air. Normally this move has 2 swings, but the second swing does much less damage and uses much more Devil Trigger. So we just tap the attack button 1 time to get the most damage. Flameheart does some heavy lifting here. Flameheart creates many more hitboxes that cause stun than the Electroheart does. So even though Furia here is on fire and invented many smokes on Inferno, it can't keep up with our hot fire as we easily stunlock the boss in place. On top of this, the HD collection also has a bug that causes the Flameheart to randomly hit and cause stun to every entity in the room besides Dante. You can see these barrels in the back here are broken even though we never even got close to them. This bug and the extra hitboxes make the Flameheart use more Devil Trigger. But for most boss fights, it's actually worth it just to stun lock them and do the extra damage. Mission 9 is the classic Capcom escape, but for some reason it's about halfway through the game instead of at the end. As per tradition, you have about 25 years to escape before the building explodes. And if you somehow manage to die and take too long, I think that would automatically disqualify you for dating Leonardo DiCaprio. There are no required combat encounters in this level, it's literally just roll to the end. On the way we make a pit stop to grab the offense heart, which gives you an additional 20% damage increase. Grabbing it here saves time over grabbing it in the mission prior because it refills your Devil Trigger. I just want to take a second to shout out lonerhero, the long-standing world record holder and creator of like 90% of the strategies you see in this video. No one loves DMC2 or has done more for the DMC speedrunning community than him. While you may not like or respect DMC2, I think we can all learn to appreciate that not everyone feels the same way as us, and that people finding ways to enjoy things that others might deem not worthy is pretty cool, and that maybe there is even something to learn from those people. So as a reminder, be kind. If you see someone expressing their enjoyment of a piece of media that maybe you don't like, consider that they may really enjoy it, and having people shit all over it can really bum you out. Of course, it's okay to have your own opinion and voice it as much as you would like on your own platforms, but going to places where people are enjoying something just to tell them that you don't like it makes for a bad time. This alone makes Devil May Cry 2 speedrunning about 100 times harder than it would be otherwise. The endless barrage of people shitting on the game. Just some food for thought. Back to the run, we start mission 10, and this one's going to be a bit unique. After activating 2 buttons, we spawn in a dial that we can hit to unlock the gate. Before we can enter it though, we get sucked underground and forced to fight our way out. Down here, we're introduced to two new enemies, the Savage Golem and the Demonochorus. The flying fuckers get knocked out of the air with a shotgun blast, and we juggle a combo across the entire fight, finishing with a round trip. This spawns in the boss of this level. I give up. It's basically just Mothula from Godzilla, except its only attacks are with its offspring. It seems Dante wasn't able to defeat all of his browser history, as 4 is definitely still on the table. The larvae eat Dante and slowly do damage until you wiggle the stick and break free. This is perfect though, as it gives us an easy setup for Majin. Little did they know that eating me would only make me stronger. After a few fireballs and a laser, we're able to kill the boss and a few larvae. It's random how many larvae spawn, but after the boss dies, it'll always spawn 2 more. In the PS2 version, you can kill these before they grow big, but on the HD collection, they're invincible, so we have to kill just the large ones. Coming out of Majin, we use a Vital Star to refill our health so that the last 2 can eat us and we can wiggle free to kill them quickly. Once they're all killed, then we can use this teleporter to get back to the top and finally go through that gate. Mission 11, we are once again back in the shop, buying a purple orb, 2 large devil stars, and a small devil star. These won't be all used right away, but doing as much spending ahead of time can mitigate the amount of times we have to go into the shop, saving time across the entire run. The purple orb refills our devil trigger, and that'll be of key importance in this mission. Before it's used though, we have to keep on rolling past some enemies, and quite frankly, the ugliest textures I've ever seen in my life. Whew, thank God that's over. From here, we have to activate a dial that allows us to progress into the next LEGO Indiana Jones section. After we escape, hat and all, the Crusher is putting us on the clock. By activating DT briefly, we can use Million Stab and mash the attack button to break the wall before the ceiling falls in on us. This is where the Devil Trigger comes in clutch, as instead of doing platforming puzzle, we simply fly to the top of this room and head into the boss room. Insert this game's rival boss, Bulveric. Humanoids are always the most fun bosses to fight in action games, and Bulveric is no exception. He does, however, have 2 additional enemies in this arena, the good boys Freaky and Beaky. This fight can quickly devolve as Bulveric will teleport, switching your lock onto one of the dogs. To stop this from happening, we quickly slap Little Bro's controller right out of his hand and put him in the chair. By jumping and activating Devil Trigger, we can start to fly and then hold the A button to maintain our height. Then by timing our round trips, we could stun lock the boss, not allowing him to teleport or move, quickly ending it. Mission 12 and 13 are both super short and will be featuring a new face, Chris. The Devil May Cry speedrunning community is pretty small. Despite this, many community members have made great efforts to make our hobby as accessible and understandable as possible. One of my more recent efforts was to run a Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3 weekly individual level tournament. Due to this event, we've had many new players take a shot at multiple sections of each game, and every single week new strategies were developed that pushed the games even further. Both missions, 12 and 13 in DMC2, were greatly improved in this time, and so I'm taking this opportunity to showcase those two levels and a new player. If you want to watch a video recapping the events of that tournament, you can find it over on my WaifuRuns TV channel, where I upload stream highlight videos and more short-form video essays. Chris got the best time and improved the world record on both Mission 12 and 13, so I'm going to use his runs to showcase them in this video. Back to the game, Chris, styling his diesel costume Drip, starts up by using his small Devil Star. This small Devil Star is afforded entirely by the Orb Manipulation done on Mission 1. After eating it, he jumps into the most disorienting room in the entire franchise. A spherical room where the walkable platform rotates across the room while you have to destroy a series of purple pyramids to progress. Chris jumps, then kicks one of the pyramids and activates Devil Trigger to start flying. He then round trips the next and deactivates Devil Trigger. From here, he does a technique called a kick cancel. By holding the gun button and rhythmically tapping the melee button, you can stay in the air forever as Dante gets increased height from attempting to shoot, then stays in the air with the first kick in the combo. He switches targets and kicks all of the pyramids in sequence, instantly ending the room and unlocking the next. From here, he rolls to the boss Plutonian, which he then completely destroys with a million stab and then a few round trips. Back to the story, both Lucia and Dante have been searching for Arcana, because they apparently helped stop Arius. In the process of searching for them, it is revealed that Arius actually created Lucia and she is a demon. Because of this, Lucia feels she needs to take down Arius alone, and after the last Arcana is found, she goes to confront him while sending Dante on a delivery trip to Martier. Martier explains what is happening and asks Dante for help, but he leaves it up to a coin toss because he's just that badass.
Your lucky streak continues, Granny.
Lucia goes to confront Arius but gets her ass beat and is held as a hostage. Dante arrives and starts mission 13. It's a bit ironic that Dante technically loses this fight in the story because it's literally a 7-second blowout in the speedrun. After using a large Devil Star, Chris is able to completely blow out Arius' boy hole by doing round trips close to the ground and stun locking him. Despite this, Dante gives Arius the Arcana, which he then uses to summon the demon world. Dante saves Lucia by jumping out of an exploding building and goes off to fix the problems that he has made thus far. Insert mission 14. This mission requires Dante to activate 4 dials throughout an open area before confronting a boss at the end. The first dial is all alone up in the air, but it can be activated quickly by doing some kick cancels. From here, we head to the next dial, and we have to jump into this ambush to do so. However, for some reason, you can wall run on this wall and it completely despawns all the enemies in the room. This allows for activating the dial for essentially free. We avoid the third sword that's in this room as it's simply a less damage but slightly faster variation of Rebellion. The last thing that we want is less damage. Before anything, we use a large Devil Star and switch from the Flame Heart to the Electric Heart. This is because we need to make the most of our Devil Trigger, and the extra hitboxes on Flame Heart doesn't actually help with hitting the dials faster and costs us a lot more DT. On top of this, the boss in this level, it's better to use the Electric Heart on. 2 more dials to go and we arrive at the next one and have to use R2 to override lock on and be able to round trip it without the enemies stealing our attacks. The last dial is up in the air, and there are enemies around, so it's super difficult to get it cleanly without enemies messing you up. By quickly arriving in a set spot and double jumping, we're able to get the dial in only 3 hits, saving our double trigger and getting us out of there ASAP. This is where things get really weird because, yeah, it's Phantom. The first boss from DMC 1 that we killed and is gone forever is here, and neither Dante nor Phantom even comment on this at all. Regardless, he is actually one of the harder bosses in this game because his good old boy hole blasting weakness is now gone, meaning you have to fight him head on. This is done by alternating attack patterns, adapting to Phantom's attacks. The first 3 hits of the normal combo, followed by either DT stingers or the overhead DT attack, followed by stinger. The goal here is to use Devil Trigger to tank damage when Phantom is attacking, so you don't get tossed away, and then to do as many attacks with DT not active in order to build it up more. A few cycle and he's donezo, leading us into the hardest mission in the game, Mission 15. It's probably the most straightforward mission when it comes to structure, but just because all you have to do is kill enemies does not mean that it's straightforward to do that quickly. This mission is where you'll see that risk-reward Majin strategy reach its climax, just like me when I see the strategy done correctly. After hitting the eyeball in the center of the room, a portal opens up in its stead. Alongside of this is a timer, 3 minutes. If this timer reaches 0, then the entire mission restarts from the get-go. Thankfully, this should never happen in a speedrun, but if things go very, very wrong, it can. Wouldn't be the first time I've seen it. With the first wave spawning in, we head over to the door that got us into this room. The good old pastime of taking door damage on purpose continues as we pelt the Demonochorus with pistol shots while making progress towards that sweet Majin setup. Once we are there, we don't jump into it right away. This is a multi-wave fight, and we want to farm as much Majin usage as possible. So in order to do so, we're going to set up a bit of a manipulation. Not the same kind as in Mission 1, but similar. When you have low health, there is an increased chance that enemies will drop green orbs to refill your health. This makes sense, but they also have an increased chance to drop white orbs. We haven't seen one of those yet, but they refill your Devil Trigger. On top of this increased chance from low HP, having a higher style rank also increases this chance, and it stacks. You can get upwards of a 45% chance for a white orb drop per enemy death by having low HP and an S rank on the style meter. So instead of rushing the Majin, we try to farm towards an S rank for style, and once we get there, we activate it then. This allows the kills we get in Majin to have an exceedingly high chance to drop a white orb, which can be left on the ground until we need it for later. After killing the first 4 Mistra, the next wave is spawned in, and then we can activate Doomsday to kill the entire wave in one go. Thankfully, one of them drops some white and green orbs, so we can go get those after we transform back to normal. This gives us enough Devil Trigger to be able to round trip the 3 Blood Goats that spawn in the next wave. Upon their deaths, we can also farm door hits once again to set up Majin one last time. After a few more enemy kills, the last enemies in the wave spawn, and we activate Doomsday once more to instantly end the fight, allowing us to leave the level. You saw it performed nearly perfectly, but what makes this mission the hardest in the game is all the ways it can go wrong. If at any point you accidentally collect a green orb before activating Majin, then your setup is ruined, and you don't get a uniform amount of health from green orbs. This means setting up Majin again is near impossible. On top of that, you have to farm the S rank with basically 0 HP, meaning even one hit will kill you. Not only losing time, but messing up your Majin setup. And if for some reason you don't have a gold orb, you'll have to restart the entire mission. Not to mention that the white orb drop is also not guaranteed. If that happens, then you simply have to build Devil Trigger back up by hand and fighting the goats without taking any damage. Into the portal we arrive at Arius' tower, and thusly, Mission 16. Mission 16 is the longest in the game, with 2 boss fights and 2 auto-scrollers, but it starts off with one of the more active fights. With waves of blood goats spawning in, we have to juggle them while building Devil Trigger, so that we can dispatch them quickly. By shotgunning them onto the ground and then doing a 1-2-3 stinger combo, we can keep them stun locked, unable to counter us as we bounce from one to the next. Once we have enough Devil Trigger to activate, we throw in an attack or 2 with DT to finish the fight just a little bit faster. Once the door opens, we arrive at the first autoscroller of the level. Thankfully, this isn't one where we just do nothing. There isn't very much doing nothing in this game if you haven't noticed. The elevator takes a fixed amount of time to reach the desired floor, but enemies spawn in throughout the duration of the trip. Because we are simply waiting, this is the perfect time to set up Majin. Being in such a confined space makes it a bit scary, as there isn't much you could do to avoid enemies comboing you into oblivion. This is why we use Devil Trigger to reduce the hit stun when at lower health, just to be safe. We don't have to worry about accidentally activating Majin Devil Trigger though, because Majin will only activate if you activate DT after your health is already in the red range. So even if we are actively in DT and we get to red health, it won't automatically trigger. Killing them after the Majin setup is achieved is also not ideal because there's a pretty decent chance that they'll drop a green orb. And with such little room in this room to navigate, if one does drop a green orb, you're pretty much guaranteed to pick it up. With Majin set up, we make our way through Arius's building, rolling our way towards Justice. Nope, not that Justice. We do arrive at some purple balls, and this part could get a bit scary. If any of these purple balls hit us, we'll be dragged into an extra combat encounter. And because we're saving Majin for our first boss fight, having to do the combat before then is super scary. To avoid this, we do a scripted set of movements to cleanly manipulate and avoid the orbs. Once past them, we grab an item that we use to then change the level into demon mode. It's like goblin mode, except for less exciting and less Danny DeVito. A few rooms of rolling later, and we arrive at our first boss fight of the mission, Bolvric. He's once again joined by his doggo companions, but they aren't going to get to play the game this time either. With our Majin setup, we can activate just before the fight starts and then bum rush Bolvric before he gets a chance to move. The camera in this room is absolutely awful, with the boss being completely off screen most of the time. This doesn't matter much as long as he doesn't parry. Bolvric can spin his sword around and block your attacks. This block triggers him to teleport, which then causes you to lose lock on targeting. This is the worst thing that could happen, but it can be avoided if you're paying attention to his attacks. The only problem is that it's a little hard to do when he's barely on the screen. Thankfully, runners tend to sort of pick up on what attack Bolvric is doing with practice, even if you can only see 10% of his body on screen. One down and one to go, we head back to the elevator, this time with barely any health. We still want to set up Majin for the next boss, but because our HP is so low and we have no Devil Trigger, this becomes much more complicated. Farming style on the first few kills, we build DT and hope that we get a green orb drop, making it easier to get into Majin. Once we do and leave the elevator, the game has one last fuck you, as if this mission wasn't hard enough. There's a green orb in the center of the next room. Grabbing this completely screws your Majin setup and the boss. If you want to do this boss fight without Majin setups, it would take at least a minute and a half longer. Now in the final stretch of this mission, we arrive at everyone's favorite boss, Trismagia. This boss can try suck my balls. Essentially, it's 3 heads that float far away from the player, and only one of these heads at a time can be damaged. They take turns attacking the player, but give very little openings for them to be hit with melee. This is circumvented in the speedrun by finding the weakened head with the pistols, then activating Majin, and using the fireballs to prime the boss for defeat. Once Devil Trigger is low, the laser attack comes out and brings the boss down to 0 HP. However, this doesn't actually kill the boss, as it can only die after doing one of its merged head fireball attacks. So after Majin is depleted, there is one more dodge that needs to be hit. With that dodge, the last mission proper of the game is completed. The following 2 are both just boss fights. At the start of 17, we make some big purchases, 2 large Devil Stars and 1 small. We instantly use one of the large ones at the start of the mission and also take this time to re-equip the Flame Heart for its extra stun values. Arius is at the top of his tower trying to use the Arcana that Dante gave him to summon Argosox, a powerful demon, so that he can absorb them and become...
all-powerful immortal!
Unfortunately for him, Dante actually switched out one of the Arcana with his coin that he uses for douchebaggery. And while that is a powerful tool, it's not quite as big of a tool as Dante, or quite enough to be able to summon an all-powerful demon.
A false coin for a false god.
When the fight finally begins, we roll a few times to get up close and personal with Arius, just like before with the round trips. They come in hot and stun lock the boss with the Flamed Heart's broken hitboxes. If we're lucky, the Flame Heart glitch will occur, stunning everything in the room and keeping Arius standing. If not, when he falls, we do a landing thrust to get some extra damage in and save our DT from when he gets back up. If we don't time the attacks perfectly, then he'll teleport away.
My dream, my life. I was going to be the king of this world.
King? Yeah. Here's your crown.
With Heihachi put back in his diaper like it's Tekken Tag Tournament, Lucia and Dante reconvene on the city streets, where Lucia begs Dante to kill her because she's a demon. Dante refuses and the gate to the demon world opens anyways, even though the ritual wasn't complete. No, I'm not making fun of the game, that's literally the line. There is no explanation.
The ritual was incomplete.
Lucia insists that she'll go fight Argosax because she's disposable, and Dante says, let's leave it up to fate. With one last flip of the coin, it's decided that he will go instead, stating that he already knows the story Martier was going to tell him. The story was that Dante's father, Sparta, did the same thing he's about to do for them. He gives Lucia the coin and heads into the demon world to take on Argosax. Lucia then fights off a possessed Arius, and it's later revealed that Dante's coin was double-sided, meaning he was gonna do it all along anyways. He just wanted to look cool. In the process, Lucia learns that even though she's a demon, she could still be raised by humans and be a good person, thus causing her to cry. Hey look, it's the title of the game! Well, let's see how cool Dante really looks heading into the final bosses. The first is Argosax the Chaos, which is essentially a boss rush consisting of most of the game's prior bosses. And Griffin, from DMC1 for some reason. Each head has a set amount of HP, and when it depletes it dies and can no longer attack. We have stacked up a gold orb since the beginning of the game, and it's going to get used here. Taking intentional hits from the building boss, we build up DT to round trip him once before dying. Once we die, we can then use the gold orb, respawning with full health and full devil trigger. This allows us to skip the shop and save money on what we would otherwise be using as a large devil star. Back to fighting, we then do round trips on the remaining bosses, making sure to use a large devil star to refill DT on the way. The final boss we fight is Griffin, but before we kill him, we use our small devil star and set up Majin on his lasers. This allows us to enter the Despair embodied boss fight with full Majin. From there, the fight is rather simple, a few fireballs and a laser to end the fight. With the demons destroyed, the job is done. Dante is now trapped in hell and decides to go in even deeper to kill even more demons, and the city is left to rebuild from the aftermath. And that is Devil May Cry 2's speedrun in 44 minutes and 6 seconds. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two about Devil May Cry 2 today. While it might not be the best game of all time or even very good, there is definitely more under the hood of this often overhated piece of gaming legacy. And even if you don't feel that way, you can at least understand that some people really do enjoy playing the game, as evidenced by all the effort they put into bringing the speedrun time down as far as it has. If there's one thing I can ask of you to take away from this video, it's to be kind. It's okay to not enjoy or like a game, but if you see someone else who's enjoying it, Please, just let them enjoy it. I find it's a lot like Little Caesars pizza. It tastes a lot better when there isn't someone in your ear bitching at you, telling you how awful it is. I'm definitely going to make some more videos in the future expanding on all of what DMC2 has to offer, and even tackle this problem of hate more directly. But until then, thanks for watching and stay stylish.